come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, there we go. I'm deaf, so I have to have the volume turned up. This will be a unique and interesting evening because this is the first night of a whole lot of things that have changed, and even you will be able to see that the background has changed. You can't really see what's in front of me. So we're going to see if BZ can get through the night without screwing up monumentally. And really, honestly, do the math. What do you think that chance is? Yeah, you and I both know what the percentage is on that. Anyway, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media studios. They are still sumptuous. They are still palatial. I wish I could turn things around, and we'll do an update on the studio. In any event, you got to belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat. It's great to see you back. Kelly's going to be your bartendress tonight. She pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is, in fact, lighted. Now it's way behind me to my left, but you can still see it, which means that you can listen and chat at shrmedia.com, and you can also watch the show tonight on YouTube and also on Facebook Live, on the SHR Media YouTube channel and Facebook Live. Periscope is not playing well in the sandbox tonight for whatever reason, and we'll get the kinks run out of that. Over the weekend, we got a computer for the studio that's essentially a gaming computer. So this thing looks like Dick Butkus. No one's going to get that reference except me. But it looks like Dick Butkus back in the 1970s. That's how strong this is. It's a gaming computer, let's put it that way. So it has lots of this in it and lots of that in it, and then it melds both this and that to make it so muscular that Dick Butkus, number 51, linebacker, middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears, he would have been proud. So I have to continue my rant, though, and it goes like this. We don't water our crimes. No, we don't water our crimes. We don't water our drinks. Okay, first, I have to be honesty and clarity. I value both of those things. We don't water our crimes. When I commit a crime here, it's a big damn crime, okay? So no watering of the crimes at all. Get that right the hell out of your head. And on that notion, we also don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. The crimes, come see, come saw. All that we ask is that you flush the damn toilet. Don't flood the tube like occurred last week. You got to jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight, I'm sorry. I apologize from the depths and breadth of my heart, but I don't have any guest. Oh, by the way, because I'm just thinking about it, I am going to have Carrie Baxter Donovan on this coming Thursday. And, of course, as per normal, the Sackheads Radio Show is going to be on tomorrow night, right here, same bat time, same bat channel, shrmedia.com. So Sackheads Against Tyranny. Sackheads Clint says he'll be back. I'll take a one of those, you go into Walmart or Kmart. I don't even know if there are any Kmarts left. And I'll ask for a rain check on that one, okay? Whew. Anyway, we got a new computer in here, and I'm staring at myself on basically 3 monitors. There's the massive 32-inch monitor that we have up here. Then right in front of me this weekend, we took receipt of two 27-inch Scepter monitors, and they are dedicated. Here's one over here on my right that is dedicated to running the show from XSplit so that I can change all sorts of different views for your view on YouTube. And over here, if I want to, since I know I'm pretty confident that the show is running, if I go over here now and hit this, I should theoretically be able to see all the people in the chat room. And I do. There it is. Now, this is the interesting thing. Now I can see you on chat. Now I have a dedicated screen right in front of my eyes where I can look at you in chat. And because of that, I can see that Traveling Cynic is here. Michael John Pasqua is here. Mary Brockman is here. Simone Says is here. One viewer is here who will not be unmasked because on this show at SHR, we do not unmask people, unlike other regimes, shall we say. And one of my favorite persons to pronounce, Beantown Billy. Beantown Billy is here. So everyone right now is saying, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. They're all shaking hands. Welcome, welcome. So you can look, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can see that the stuff behind me has changed. The lava lamp is still in the picture, and the lava lamp, I think, is pretty much going to sit there from now to in perpetuity. And whenever you do things new and you carry things out, now I've got 4 screens staring in front of me, and the control board is still over here. Actually, if you're looking at the video, you can actually see the board, part of the board. It's a lovely Arcturus board. And no, I don't get paid for saying that. Over here, so I can run the audio over here, and then I've got my laptop right here and 2 screens, and courtesy of Sackhead Sean, who, even though this was the weekend, everybody's working for the weekend, he took all this grand time to unpackage this stuff, assemble it, put it together, and what you cannot see under here, under the desk, is the gaming computer. And when I first saw this thing, Sackhead Sean sent me a photo of this thing. And I knew it was a badass computer when I looked at it. And the first thing I saw is, this thing is glowing red. It glows. There's a little side you can look and see the parts running in there, except there aren't any parts running. But this thing is glowing red like lava. So it's right under my left leg right here. And so now I know for a fact that the SHR cat, Demi, is outside. So if something rubs up against my leg, it's either the computer or Sackhead Sean. I don't want to say which one yet, but I don't think the computer is going to be moving anytime soon. So things have changed. It's going to be a challenge for old BZ to see if he can keep things going. I considered this for quite some time, and I wondered if I really was going to go ahead and do this. Because I had so many people tell me for so long that you really can't see, and there's the problem right there when someone says can't. And so I had people, I don't know, you can't necessarily call them trolls per se, but I had people in Twitter say, you can't and or you shouldn't say things about John McCain. So when you quantify things like that to me, tonight, do you think I'm going to be talking about John McCain? And the answer is going to be, yeah, I'm going to be talking about John McCain. But first, we're going to be talking about Kavanaugh. If you happen to see, I'm a political animal, so I watched some of the hearings until I just couldn't take it anymore. But I did hear 15 minutes and as soon as in the midst of listening to this from Ben Sass, and I'm not necessarily a Ben Sass kind of guy. Ben Sass, for me, kind of is all over the map. Some days he is conservative, and some days not quite so much. Some days he'd make McCain proud. Having said that, in the opening, once we got past all the kabuki theater, the theater of the absurd, the people playing out their roles for 2020, that is to say, on the Democrat side, we had a whole assload of auditions for 2020 trying to get their noses into the spotlight. Once we got through that and people began to make actual statements, opening statements with regard to Brett Kavanaugh, and that occurred today, his confirmation hearings for SCOTUS, I heard 15 minutes of some of the most brilliant speech that I've heard in quite some time, coming out of the mouth of Ben Sasse. About 2 minutes into this, I started tweeting on Twitter and said, folks, you got to listen to this right now because this man is making more sense, or at least an equal amount of sense, than various quotations that I've already read over this show by Brett Kavanaugh, who essentially is a strict constructionist. I can't even really say strict constructionist in terms of the Constitution, but he believes in the Constitution. He believes in the Founding Fathers. He believes in the Bill of Rights. And he doesn't try, and he said it's his duty not to create law. Now, with that in mind, I found the full cut, and I'm going to be playing that full 15-minute version later of Brett Kavanaugh. But we are going to go into some of the early stuff. We're going to get into, well, what do I normally do? Well, let's see. I start out with customarily.
It's time for happy stories and good times.
And do I have a happy story for you? This just came out today. This is from the Washington Times. It says, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel won't seek re-election in 2019. As far as I'm concerned, that's a happy story. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel announced today that he won't seek re-election next year, saying he's ready to move on to other challenges. Okay, I'll do the translation for you. This is libtard speak for, it's really hot in my seat right now, and I'm not the guy that is really particularly interested in taking all this heat. And you know what they say about heat in kitchens, so I think this is my last term because mostly I don't think I'm not going to be wanting to be associated with any of the things that really will solve the crime problem in Chicago, which is to crack down on it. And that's not something that he's particularly advocated for. So he says, this is a quote, "This has been the job of a lifetime, but it's not a job for a lifetime." Wow. This is the same guy you have to remember that said, within every crisis there's an opportunity, or words to that effect, Senator, and made sure that was a transitional phrase that he used for Obama, because, of course, he used to work for Barack Hussein Obama. Mr. Emanuel had been an advisor to President Clinton, then a congressman from Illinois, imagine that, and then President Obama's first chief of staff before leaving to run for the mayorship, first winning in 2011, and then winning re-election in 2015 in a race that had to go to a runoff. Mr. Obama, whose political career also grew out of Chicago politics, praised his former staffer as a tireless and brilliant public servant. Mr. Emanuel, with his wife Amy at his side, said he took pride in local advances such as longer school years and universal kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. That is to say, if you can get your child to kindergarten without being shot by one of your neighbors. That might be just a hair of an issue. Anyway, I consider that to be a happy story. There's another story that broke today, and we know that the funeral for John McCain started about a month ago, and then it's been going on for the past 2 months. It ended yesterday with his interment in, I think, Annapolis, if I'm not mistaken. And it was up to the governor of Arizona to decide, well, who am I going to appoint in the interim for Senator John McCain's seat? And it was decided today, CNBC indicated former Senator John Kyle will replace John McCain. So Arizona Senator Doug Ducey picked Kyle to succeed the late John McCain. So here's the deal. Kyle is the former number 2 guy. He's the former number 2 Senate Republican, and he retired himself from the Senate in 2013. He'll probably end up serving through the rest of the year, and after that, it's going to be Election City. McCain, the longtime Republican senator and former GOP presidential nominee, died last month after a struggle with brain cancer. Cindy McCain said that Kyle is a dear friend of mine and John's. Kyle is 76 years old. He represented Arizona in the Senate for nearly 20 years before he retired in 2013. And he spent time as the chamber's second-ranking Republican and served his entire time in the Senate right alongside McCain. So, as you can see, when Kyle retired, Jeff Flake, aptly named, stepped in behind Kyle. So we know that's what started. Then we have the Kavanaugh hearings this morning. And I see it's about 11:23 on the East Coast and 8:22 on the left coast. In Bolivia, it's 17:45 and 745.729 seconds. Subparagraph 3, I think it is, Sector 4 in Bolivia. Having said that, this morning it was absolute mayhem. And as I indicated, all the Democrat candidates that were present, this was their time to come out and show what an inclusive group they were and trot out the various makes and manners of kabuki theater or theater of the absurd. Because when this first started out, it was absolute chaos. What happened is that all the children were apparently brought into the room, heckling, screaming, kicking, shrieking, literally shrieking. And then the Democrats were making an immediate call to adjourn. You want to hear some of this? These are adults. Now, here's Judge Kavanaugh sitting at a table by himself, facing the various senators and the representatives in front of him, and back behind him were his supporters, and then back, way in the back, was this lovely, considerate audience. And this is just a sampling of what this sounded like.
I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve as Associate Justice.
It starts already. He doesn't get a sentence into this before it starts.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed. Regular order. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night less than 15 hours.
This is Kamala Harris, by the way. Here she is auditioning for 2020. I'm sure she's going to be running for president in 2020. So she wants to let the people know that she is a strong-willed woman, and she's going to stand up for the Democrats, and she's not going to let anybody steamroller over her. So cue it. She's going for an Oscar.
Hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome
to Judge Kavanaugh. We have not been given an opportunity to have a meaningful hearing on this nominee.
Their two daughters.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleague, Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman, we received 42,000 documents that we haven't been able to review last night, and we believe this hearing should be postponed.
I know this is an exciting day for all of you here,
Mr. Chairman,
and you're rightly proud.
Mr. Chairman, if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
There you go. Do you see the logic in this? If we can't have everything our way, then what we'll do is we'll simply shit in the punch bowl.
Chairman, I move to adjourn.
So let's just adjourn. We're not getting our way, so if we're not getting our way, it is, in fact, time to adjourn.
From Judge Kavanaugh later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a little bit of a clue. The people that are shrieking and yelling in the back, 22 of them got arrested and pulled out of this room. And if you think this is chaos, oh, just you wait. It gets so much better.
And I move to adjourn. Mr. Chairman, we have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Mr. Chairman, regular order is called for.
Which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms. Well, and Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this.
By the way, this is Democrat, of course, Richard Blumenthal, prior Democrat Kamala Harris from, of all places, California. Yay, California.
Okay.
This is a mockery and a tragedy of justice. This is a tragedy of justice will not go back. Cancel Brett Kavanaugh. Adjourn the hearing.
People are acting as though Brett Kavanaugh is Satan. Whoever that person is should be removed from the room simply because she sounds like Fran Drescher or nails on a chalkboard. Get her ass out.
Command order. Chuck.
We're not in executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a roll call vote on my motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. I ask for a roll call vote.
We're not in executive session. We will continue as planned.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized, sir? Mr. Chairman, I appeal to the chair to recognize myself.
That's just how it began. But wait, there's more. They wanted to adjourn. They didn't get their way. And so, like little puerile children, they decide that, again, they're going to do anything and everything that they can to ruin the situation. In the meantime, Brett Kavanaugh sits at his table by himself and has to wait for all of this to slow down. The other thing that you may or may not have heard is that his children and his wife who were there were afraid for their safety, so security escorted them out of the chamber. That's how bad it got. And this is what passes for politics now in the United States of America. You can't even get a confirmation hearing on someone who's allegedly going to be confirmed, and I fully am confident that Kavanaugh is going to get confirmed. But it's the worst of all possible kabuki theater. It's wacky. I'm going to come back. We're going to have more Kavanaugh. When I come back, I'm going to have that cut that I promised you. I'm going to see if I can run the stuff in the interim in this new configuration. These days, I tell you what, BZ really does need a producer. Folks, thanks for listening to the SHR Media's Bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. You got to like us, and you want to subscribe to us on Twitter. You got to follow us on Twitter. That's at SHR Media Group. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube, the SHR Media channel on YouTube, and also SHR Media on Facebook. Subscribe to us, follow us, and like us, pretty please. All we're asking is just a little sugar, please.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny, on shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday, live and direct on the SHR Media Network, shrmedia.com. Be there.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through shrmedia.com, highplanestalkradio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Hey, who's going to take Sean's chair?
I'll run the buttons if you want.
The what?
The slider
the
thingies. Those
what?
Things.
We have those?
Yeah, right over there.
Where?
It's on the board. That damn technology.
Fucking technology.
I know. What are we going to call it?
Call what?
The show.
What?
The show.
What show?
The new show, Wednesdays. Every Wednesday on SHRmedia.com. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Sackheads.
Against tyranny.
There you
Against
go.
tyranny.
I like that. Let's do it.
You guys are porked.
Hello. I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios. We are about 2 miles from the belly of the beast, the Bill Mill, the capital of the state of California, the locus of evil on the entire left coast, where I am broadcasting, behind enemy lines in occupied Fornicalia at night. It's not quite late enough. It's only about 8:35, but after I get through with the show about 10:30 as I'm driving home, damn near every night, the smell of sulfur and brimstone around here from the locus of evil, the Bill Mill, is cloying and makes you want to gag. It's terrible. It's execrable. A lot of cool things coming up. Sackhead Sean did an arseload of work this past weekend, put up both of these monitors in the new computer. Everything is reconfigured. I think you saw, if you were watching on YouTube, you saw some new configurations during the break. Those are going to continue to get worked on. What's really bizarre is I'm looking at YouTube chat right now. So while I'm in YouTube chat, and it's an entirely separate group of people in chat, if we could just get everyone, can't we all just get along? Can't we all just get together? There's Boyd McPhail in YouTube chat, the Cold Warriors in YouTube chat, Mary Brockman and Aviator Wood is in YouTube chat. And then if I go over to here and I look in the SHR Media chat, ton of people over here too. Simone Says is in chat. Traveling Cynic, Andy Wood, welcome Andy. Michael John, the Alaskan, thanks for being here, the Alaskan. Mary Brockman, Beantown Billy, and one viewer. So if we put them all together, and what do you got? Bippity boppity do. All on SHR Media Live right now in the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. I don't know about you, but I'm having a great time. I really am. It may not sound like it. Yes, it sounds like it. Damn it, it's my show, and if I say it sounds like it, then it does. I had played the chaos of the opening of Kavanaugh. By the way, a lot of people got arrested. Well, here's something odd. You didn't see this coming, did you? Women's March leader Linda Sarsour, the Muslim, was among the left-wing activists arrested today for interrupting the confirmation hearing for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. As a matter of fact, that's who you just heard. Sarsour entered wearing her burqa. The hearing room in the Hart Senate office building just before 9:30. She sat quietly with other anti-Kavanaugh activists until the hearing opened, at which point she loudly rebuked Republican lawmakers and urged them to adjourn. She continued to shout at senators as she was dragged from the room by multiple police officers. Several other activists brandishing signs immediately followed suit and were removed. Stop. As I was coming on the way over here, driving down the boulevard, it sounds like a song. It sounds like a Jackson Browne song, as a matter of fact. I happened to be listening on the radio, and another person overheard a conversation between one of the protesters and what looked like another protester who just wasn't in the room at the time. And the conversation went something like this. The first one said to the second protester, "Hey, did you get arrested yet?" And the second protester said to the first, "No, today isn't my day to get arrested. Tomorrow's my day." So do you think there's any purposefulness in that? That it's all linked together? And how was it that the protesters knew somehow to say something similar to, "We have to adjourn," and then the Democrat senators picked that right up? Isn't that astounding? It's just quinky-dink. It's absolutely quinky-dink. So Linda Sarsour, by the way, was one of the approximately 20 demonstrators that were forcibly removed from Tuesday's hearing by Capitol Police. The protesters said Kavanaugh would protect President Donald Trump on the Supreme Court and provide the fifth vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision which legalized abortion nationwide. So I guess Democrats, leftists, and the American media maggots think that to not have hot and cold running abortions 24/7 in this country is a bad thing. Okay. You know what the worst thing would be if Roe versus Wade got overturned? Let's stop and actually conjure. Let's use a little logic in this. We've had, for the past at least 5 years, on critical issues, a Supreme Court that generally has run 5-4, depending on the issue. And some of them were squeakers. Heller versus D.C. was a squeaker, 5-4. It passed by one vote. And what Heller versus D.C. meant for the Second Amendment in terms of your right to possess a weapon in your home, you were one vote away, folks, in Heller versus D.C. for losing your right to carry a firearm or possess one in your home. That's how close it was. And now leftists in the LDAM seem to think that you're going to lose Roe versus Wade at the drop of a hat. Roe versus Wade has to come up from various federal courts and finally end up at SCOTUS. And probably in a worst-case scenario, SCOTUS would say, in the worst-case scenario, well, you know what? We're going to make it an issue of states' rights. So the states that want abortion and the people that can lobby for or against abortion, that's what they're going to get. States' rights, the 10th Amendment. But you can't even have that. It must be a federal law. Well, that's funny. The other thing about Planned Parenthood is they don't want Planned Parenthood, just funded by donations. They want the federal grants. They want federal money to fund all of that as well. And they keep thinking that this is all going to occur, and Roe versus Wade is going to get fundamentally removed under Kavanaugh, who has not said anything like that at all. Fox News happened to say this: Kavanaugh Supreme Court hearing kicks off with numerous arrests as protesters shout down lawmakers.
Hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve as associate.
Let's go forward here just a little bit. Here we go. Because now we're not just going to hear the protesters. Now we're going to hear people attempt to make cogent Democrat remarks.
To recognize myself or one of my colleagues.
You're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to be recognized on your sense of decency and integrity. Even the documents.
This is Cory Booker, by the way. Hey, wow, he's running for president. Isn't that amazing that all these people that are objecting are running for president in 2020? Wow, I didn't see that one coming.
You have requested, Mr. Chairman, even the ones that you said, the limited documents you have requested, this committee has not received. And the documents we have, you, sir, have labeled committee confidential. They should be transparent. This committee, sir, is a violation of even the values I've heard you talk about time and time again, the ideals that we should have. What is the rush? What are we trying to hide by not having the documents out front?
Oh, he talks about rushing? The ACA? Does that sound familiar at all? Maybe not so much. By the way, all those shenanigans and people yelling and screaming and shouting, that delayed the confirmation hearing, just the start of the confirmation hearing, by 77 minutes, just to go through all that ridiculous foppery. But now we've gotten to the part where I want the part by Ben Sasse that I want you to hear. And for the next 15 minutes, mostly without interruption, I will be making some salient comments now and then. I just heard made by Ben Sasse one of the most cogent arguments for keeping Brett Kavanaugh and removing the deep state, although he did not name it. You will come to recognize it when you hear it. He's made one of the most logical arguments ever for constitutional judges and for the rule of law and for the tricameral version of law that we have, the three branches of government. I don't think I could have written it any better. I don't think I could have stated it any better. And if you're watching this video, you'll notice that, yeah, he has some notes. Ben Sasse has a number of notes and pages that he's turning below. But I can tell you quite frankly, if you look at the video later, he's not looking at these notes. This is extemporaneous. This is coming right out of him as he looks at the camera. This is 15 minutes of some of the most cogent speaking I've heard come out of the Senate in quite some time.
We need to get to Judge Kavanaugh, but I really want to riff with Amy for a while. Senator Klobuchar, you did Madison, Lin-Manuel Miranda, the Magna Carta, and your dad taking you to court. Well done. I had all that on my bingo card. I have little kids, and I've taken my two little girls to court a few times too, mostly to juvie, just to scare them straight, not to turn them into attorneys. But that's
Who said that wasn't what my dad was doing, Senator Sasse?
That was wisdom in Minnesota. Congratulations, Judge, on your nomination. Ashley, congratulations and condolences. This process has to stink. I'm glad your daughters could get out of the room, and I hope they still get the free day from school. Let's do some good news, bad news. The bad news first. Judge, since your nomination in July, you've been accused of hating women, hating children, hating clean air, wanting dirty water. You've been declared a quote-unquote existential threat to our nation. Alumni of Yale Law School incensed that faculty members at your alma mater praised your selection, wrote a public letter to the school saying, quote, people will die if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed. This drivel is patently absurd, and I worry that we're going to hear more of it over the next few days. But the good news is it is absurd, and the American people don't believe any of it. This stuff isn't about Brett Kavanaugh when screamers say this stuff for cable TV news. The people who know you better, not those who are trying to get on TV, they tell a completely different story about who Brett Kavanaugh is. You've earned high praise from the many lawyers, both right and left, who've appeared before you during your 12 years on the D.C. Circuit, and those who've had you as a professor at Yale Law and at Harvard Law. People in legal circles invariably applaud your mind, your work, your temperament, your collegiality. That's who Brett Kavanaugh is. And to quote Lisa Blatt, a Supreme Court attorney from the left who's known you for a decade, quote, "Sometimes a superstar is just a superstar, and that's the case with this judge. The Senate should confirm him," close quote. It's pretty obvious to most people going about their work today that the deranged comments actually don't have anything to do with you. So we should figure out, why do we talk like this about Supreme Court nominations now? There's a bunch that's atypical in the last 19, 20 months in America. Senator Klobuchar's right. The comments from the White House yesterday about trying to politicize the Department of Justice, they were wrong and they should be condemned. And my guess is Brett Kavanaugh would condemn them. But really, the reason these hearings don't work is not because of Donald Trump. It's not because of anything the last 20 months. These confirmation hearings haven't worked for 31 years in America. People are going to pretend that Americans have no historical memory, and supposedly there haven't been screaming protesters saying women are going to die at every hearing for decades. But this has been happening since Robert Bork. This is a 31-year tradition. There's nothing really new the last 18 months. So the fact that the hysteria has nothing to do with you means that we should ask, what's the hysteria coming from? The hysteria around Supreme Court confirmation hearings is coming from the fact that we have a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the Supreme Court in American life now. Our political commentary talks about the Supreme Court like there are people wearing red and blue jerseys. That's a really dangerous thing. And by the way, if they have red and blue jerseys, I would welcome my colleagues to introduce the legislation that ends lifetime tenure for the judiciary. Because if they're just politicians, then the people should have power and they shouldn't have lifetime appointments. So until you introduce that legislation, I don't believe you really want the Supreme Court to be a politicized body, though that's the way we constantly talk about it now. We can and we should do better than this. It's predictable that every confirmation hearing now is going to be overblown, politicized circus. And it's because we've accepted a new theory about how our three branches of government should work, and in particular how the judiciary should work. What Supreme Court confirmation hearings should be about is an opportunity to go back and do schoolhouse rock civics for our kids. We should be talking about how a bill becomes a law and what the job of Article 2 is and what the job of Article 3 is. So let's try just a little bit. How did we get here and how can we fix it? I want to make just 4 brief points. Number 1, in our system, the legislative branch is supposed to be the center of our politics. Number 2, it's not. Why not? Because for the last century, and increasing by the decade right now, more and more legislative authority is delegated to the executive branch every year. Both parties do it. The legislature is impotent, the legislature is weak, and most people here want their jobs more than they really want to do legislative work, and so they punt most of the work to the next branch. Third consequence is that this transfer of...
Do you agree with that? I sure as hell do. That's exactly what's occurring. The legislature isn't doing its job, and there's chaos.
Power means the people yearn for a place where politics can actually be done. And when we don't do a lot of big, actual political debating here, we transfer it to the Supreme Court. And that's why the Supreme Court is increasingly a substitute political battleground in America. It is not healthy, but it is what happens, and it's something that our founders wouldn't be able to make any sense of. And fourth and finally, we badly need to restore the proper duties and the balance of power from our constitutional system. So, point 1, the legislative branch is supposed to be the locus of our politics, properly understood. Since we're here in this room today, because this is a Supreme Court confirmation hearing, we're tempted to start with Article 3. But really, we need Article 3 is the part of the Constitution that sets up the judiciary. We really should be starting with Article 1, which is us. What is the legislature's job? The Constitution's drafters began with the legislature. These are equal branches, but Article 1 comes first for a reason, and that's because policymaking is supposed to be done in the body that makes laws. That means that this is supposed to be the institution dedicated to political fights. If we see lots and lots of protests in front of the Supreme Court, that's a pretty good litmus test barometer of the fact that our republic isn't healthy. Because people shouldn't be thinking they are protesting in front of the Supreme Court. They should be protesting in front of this body. The legislature is designed to be controversial, noisy, sometimes even rowdy, because making laws means we have to hash out the reality that we don't all agree. Government is about power. Government is not just another word for things we do together. The reason we have limited government in America is because we believe in freedom. We believe in souls. We believe in persuasion. We believe in love. And those things aren't done by power. But the government acts by power. And since the government acts by power, we should be reticent to use power. And so it means when you differ about power, you have to have a debate. And this institution is supposed to be dedicated to debate and should be based on the premise that we know since we don't all agree, we should try to constrain that power just a little bit, but then we should fight about it and have a vote in front of the American people, and then what happens?
Constraining power. That's exactly what the Democrats don't want. But must you not don't you concur that this is one of the most brilliant speeches you've heard come out of the Senate in quite some time?
The people get to decide whether they want to hire us or fire us. They don't have to hire us again. This body is the political branch where policymaking fights should happen. And if we are the easiest people to fire, it means the only way the people can maintain power in our system is if almost all the politicized decisions happen here, not in Article 2 or Article 3. So that brings us to a second point. How do we get to a place where the legislature decided to give away its power? We've been doing it for a long time. Over the course of the last century, but especially since the 1930s and then ramping up since the 1960s, a whole lot of the responsibility in this body has been kicked to a bunch of alphabet soup bureaucracies. All the acronyms that people know about their government or don't know about their government are the places where most actual policy making, kind of in a way lawmaking, is happening right now. This is not what Schoolhouse Rock says. There's no verse of Schoolhouse Rock that says give a whole bunch of power to the alphabet soup agencies and let them decide what the governance decision should be for the people, because the people don't have any way to fire the bureaucrats. And so what we mostly do around this body is not pass laws. What we mostly do is decide to give permission to the secretary or the administrator of bureaucracy X, Y, or Z to make law-like regulations. That's mostly what we do here.
And is that not an excellent summary of the definition of the deep state?
We go home and we pretend we make laws. No, we don't. We write giant pieces of legislation, 1,200 pages, 1,500 pages long, that people haven't read, filled with all these terms that are undefined, and we say the secretary of such and such shall promulgate rules that do the rest of our dang jobs. That's why there's so many fights about the executive branch and about the judiciary, because this body rarely finishes its work. And the House is even worse. I don't really believe that. It just seemed like you needed to try to unite us in some way. So I admit that there are rational arguments that one could make for this new system. The Congress can't manage all the nitty-gritty details of everything about modern government, and this system tries to give power and control to experts in their fields, where most of us in Congress don't know much of anything, or about technical matters for sure, but you could also impugn our wisdom if you want. But when you're talking about technical, complicated matters, it's true that the Congress would have a hard time sorting out every final dot and tittle about every detail. But the real reason at the end of the day that this institution punts most of its power to executive branch agencies is because it's a convenient way for legislators to have to be able to avoid taking responsibility for controversial and often unpopular decisions. If people want to get reelected over and over again, and that's your highest goal, if your biggest long-term thought around here is about your own incumbency, then actually giving away your power is a pretty good strategy. It's not a very good life, but it's a pretty good strategy for incumbency. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the power delegation that happens from this branch is because the Congress has decided to self-neuter. Well, guess what? The important thing isn't whether or not the Congress has lame jobs. The important thing is that when the Congress neuters itself and gives power to an unaccountable fourth branch of government, it means the people are cut out of the process. There's nobody in Nebraska, there's nobody in Minnesota or Delaware who elected the Deputy Assistant Administrator of Plant Quarantine at the USDA. And yet if the Deputy Assistant Administrator of Plant Quarantine does something to make Nebraskans' lives really difficult, which happens to farmers and ranchers in Nebraska, who do they protest to? Where do they go? How do they navigate the complexity and the thicket of all the lobbyists in this town to do executive agency lobbying? They can't. And so what happens is they don't have any ability to speak out and to fire people through an election. And so ultimately, when the Congress is neutered, when the administrative state grows, when there is this fourth branch of government, it makes it harder and harder for the concerns of citizens to be represented and articulated by people that the people know that they have power over. All the power right now, or almost all the power right now, happens off stage. And that leaves a lot of people wondering who's looking out for me. And that brings us to the third point. The Supreme Court becomes our substitute political battleground. It's only 9 people. You can know them, you can demonize them, you can try to make them messiahs. But ultimately, because people can't navigate their way through the bureaucracy, they turn to the Supreme Court looking for politics. And knowing that our elected officials no longer care enough to do the hard work of reasoning through the places where we differ and deciding to shroud our power at times, it means that we look for 9 justices to be super legislators. We look for 9 justices to try to right the wrongs from other places in the process. When people talk about wanting to have empathy from their justices, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about trying to make the justices do something that the Congress refuses to do as it constantly abdicates its responsibility. The hyperventilating that we see in this process and the way that today's hearing started with 90 minutes of theatrics that are pre-planned with certain members of the other side here, it shows us a system that is wildly out of whack. And thus a fourth and final point. The solution here is not to try to find judges who will be policymakers. The solution is not to try to turn the Supreme Court into an election battle for TV. The solution is to restore a proper constitutional order with a balance of powers. We need Schoolhouse Rock back. We need a Congress that writes laws and then stands before the people and suffers the consequences and gets to go back to our own Mount Vernon if that's what the electors decide. We need an executive branch that has a humble view of its job as enforcing the law, not trying to write laws in the Congress's absence. And we need a judiciary that tries to apply written laws to facts and cases that are actually before it. This is the elegant and the fair process that the founders created. It's the process where the people who are elected, 2 and 6 years in this institution, 4 years in the executive branch, can be fired because the justices and the judges, the men and women who serve America's people by wearing black robes, they're insulated from politics. This is why we talk about an independent judiciary. This is why they wear robes. This is why we shouldn't talk about Republican and Democratic judges and justices. This is why we say justice is blind. This is why we give judges lifetime tenure. And this is why this is the last job interview Brett Kavanaugh will ever have.
And with that, we're going to go to a break, and we'll come right back. We've been having some audio issues. I think we've solved the audio issues. It's because this is a brand new configuration. We found them. Sackhead Sean found them. He's in the room. Yes, indeed. Our grandest apologies because it made the show essentially unlistenable. Great. Beantown Billy says, great. Now that the sound is all set, isn't it about time for Mary to go to bed? Don't say that. Come on.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny, on shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday, live and direct on the SHR Media Network, shrmedia.com. Be there.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the unpleasant blind guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Hey, who's going to take Sean's chair?
I'll run the buttons if you want.
The what?
The slider
what?
thingies. Those
what?
things.
We have those?
Yeah, right over there.
Where?
It's on the board. That damn technology.
Fucking technology.
I know. What are we going to call it?
Call what?
The show.
What?
The show.
What show?
The new show, Wednesdays. Every Wednesday on SHRmedia.com. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Sackheads.
Against tyranny.
There you
go. Against tyranny.
I like that. Let's do it.
You guys are porked.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. You got to subscribe to us. You got to like us. Follow us on Twitter. We are on Twitter at SHR Media Group. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Lots of people in there, folks. If you haven't hit subscribe, please hit subscribe. We're on SHR Media on Facus. On Facus. Okay, that's two in one night. On Facebook, which may be fake, but just for us, though, it is not fake. So like us and follow us on, I don't know, fake book. All right, Facebook. Time to get serious again. Anyway, we're going to continue with Ben Sasse, and this wasn't filler. This is one of the greatest speeches I've heard come out of the Senate building in quite some time. This is Ben Sasse addressing Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
Because he's going to a job where he's not supposed to be a super legislator. So the question before us today is not what does Brett Kavanaugh think 11 years ago on some policy matter. The question before us is whether or not he has the temperament and the character to take his policy views and his political preferences and put them in a box marked irrelevant and set it aside every morning when he puts on the black robe. The question is, does he have the character and temperament to do that? If you don't think he does, vote no. But if you think he does, stop the charades. Because at the end of the day, I think all of us know that Brett Kavanaugh understands his job isn't to rewrite laws as he wishes they were. He understands that he's not being interviewed.
Okay, stop right there. That's what the Democrats want, however. So that's why they're not listening to Ben Sasse, because they want the Supreme Court to write law in and of itself.
To be a super legislator, he understands that his job isn't to seek popularity. His job is to be fair and dispassionate. It is not to exercise empathy. It is to follow written laws. Contrary to the onion-like smears that we hear outside, Judge Kavanaugh...
See, not to lay on empathy, that is anathema to Democrats. If you're not empathetic, and you're just considering in this isolation the cold rule of law, that's wrong as far as they're concerned. Empathy and emotions are everything.
Doesn't hate women and children. Judge Kavanaugh doesn't lust after dirty water and stinky air. No, looking at his record, it seems to me that what he actually dislikes are legislators that are too lazy and too risk-averse to do our actual jobs. It seems to me that if you read his 300-plus opinions, what his opinions reveal to me is a dissatisfaction. I think he would argue a constitutionally compelled dissatisfaction with power-hungry executive branch bureaucrats doing our job when we fail to do it. And in this view, I think he's aligned with the founders. For our Constitution places power not in the hands of this city's bureaucracy, which can't be fired, but our Constitution places the policy-making power in the 535 of our hands because the voters can hire and fire us. And if the voters are going to retain their power, they need a legislature that's responsive to politics, not a judiciary that's responsive to politics. It seems to me that Judge Kavanaugh is ready to do his job. The question for us is whether we're ready to do our job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was absolutely perfect. That's how it should work. That's how things are supposed to go. And that was a perfect retelling of all of that. That was some of the finest 15 minutes in politics that I happen to have heard in quite some time. I argued internally about writing the post that I wrote and about addressing it on the air. And I decided that I'm going to do it now because I think that I can separate this quite logically into two categories. You'll understand what I mean in just a moment. But essentially, it's about a funereal stain. And I've had any number of opportunities to weigh in with my thoughts about John McCain on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net and right now here on my radio show. Until now, I've deferred. I deferred all last week. I thought, okay, I'm going to bring it up on Sackheads, and we didn't. Then I thought, we're going to bring it up on my show last Thursday night, and I didn't, but no longer. When I heard Barack Obama and Meghan McCain talk in the fashion that they did, and George Bush, let me not forget him, Barack Hussein Obama, George Bush, and his daughter, Meghan McCain, decided purposely that they were going to utilize the funeral of Senator John McCain as the perfect platform from which to slam the current president of the United States. And so with that, I have to say to you three specifically, thank you very kindly for allowing me to remove my gloves and cease my silence and speak freely right now, because after all, you and John McCain went there first, not me. Remember, John McCain had this event, his funeral, planned down to the gnat's eyelash for months now. There really wasn't an extemporaneous, unplanned element to the entire shebang. First, I have to say this up front, because people, if I don't, I'm going to get excoriated and dragged across the gravel. Let there be no mistake from me or from anyone else. John McCain served the U.S. Navy with honor and sacrifice. He was taken prisoner by the North Vietnamese in 1967 after he had his A-4E Skyhawk shot down over Hanoi. He was kept prisoner from 1967 to 1973. He was at the infamous Hanoi Hilton during that time, where he was tortured, beaten, and eventually made an anti-U.S. confession. Still, what he didn't do is he didn't meet with any number of anti-war groups where he could have curried favor with his captors. 5.5 years after his release, and for the rest of his life, McCain's wartime injuries left him permanently incapable of raising his arms above his head. And there's no denying, as far as he could, McCain held his mud and was, pretty much beyond any doubt, a tough guy in captivity. And I would be remiss if I failed to mention his numerous military decorations and awards, to include the Silver Star, 2 Legion of Merits, the DFC, the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Bronze Star Medals, 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, and the Prisoner of War Medal. And then came politics, okay? The McCain funeral was just this past Saturday, and all it was politics, and lots of it.
You mentioned John McCain earlier. It seems the country is just yearning for civility. A lot of the coverage has been leading up to this funeral on the president's handling of McCain's death. Asked if he had missed an opportunity to unite the country, the president responded with this, quote, "No, I don't think I did at all. I've done everything that they requested, and no, I don't think I have at all." Ron, you attended today's funeral for McCain. What is your reaction to that?
See, this is a lie of half-truths. We'll get to the lie. This is CNN. All they do is lie. They are fake news.
You know, I was struck on it by the tone of today's funeral. It was less a eulogy than it was a call to arms. I mean, it really...
Thank you. At least one guy on CNN gets it. Maybe not for the right reason, but he gets it.
Every speaker, with the partial exception of Henry Kissinger, you know, either directly like Meghan McCain or more indirectly like George W. Bush and President Obama was somewhere, former President Obama was somewhere in the middle, made a very affirmative case for a different kind of politics. Even as former President Obama did, acknowledging how often he disagreed with John McCain, but nonetheless, that powerful line where he said, you know, but we recognize we were all on the same team. And I think it was a bipartisan rejection of this kind of...
I'll tell you later who's on what team and for what reason, because unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that's bullshit.
Politics that is inherently grounded in division. I mean, every couple days, President Trump has to find a new target on Twitter or in his public comments, something new to kind of stir up, you know, he believes that the key to consolidating his side is to essentially have them constantly at war against other Americans. And
and Obama didn't do that, did he? Obama was the great uniter. He never used identity politics. Not at all.
I think you saw today this kind of yearning among a portion of the leadership, certainly a majority of the leadership class, and a portion of the country over the past week for something different. You know, very few non-presidents in American history have had the kind of week of remembrance that John McCain did today. I mean, probably the last one was Bobby Kennedy in 1968. You may have to go back to Daniel Webster in the 19th century to find another example of someone who wasn't a president and has struck such a chord. And obviously, it's largely because of his life, but it's also because of the times and the inherent contrast he provides to the kind of politics that we are living through, which is essentially based, above all, on division.
That was CNN. But here's the question that I think I have. The John McCain funeral became #resistance itself. How does that happen? How? Easy. When the person who planned the funeral meticulously for months, John McCain himself, insisted that it do so. Whom to include, whom to exclude. And then there was Meghan McCain herself.
At the funeral for U.S. Senator John McCain, his daughter Meghan remembered her father's legacy while delivering a sharp rebuke of President Donald Trump. Without naming the president who didn't attend the service, McCain made a forceful statement condemning Trump, who feuded publicly with the late senator and mocked his military service even after he grew ill.
We gather here to mourn the passing of American greatness. The real thing, not cheap rhetoric from men who will never come near the sacrifice he gave so willingly. The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again because America was always great.
In their eulogies, former U.S. Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush also delivered words that could be seen as aimed at Trump.
So much of our politics, our public life, our public discourse can seem small and mean and petty.
Right, because Obama was never small or mean or petty.
Trafficking in bombast and insult and phony controversies and manufactured outrage. It's a politics that pretends to be brave and tough, but in fact is born of fear.
He respected the dignity inherent in every life, a dignity that does not stop at borders and cannot be erased by dictators.
Nearly every major U.S. political leader, including the Clintons, attended McCain's memorial service, while Trump spent
While Clinton wasn't looking at the ass of the woman in front of him, however.
Morning tweeting and taking a trip to one of his private golf clubs in Virginia. McCain's family had made clear Trump was not welcome at the funeral.
By the way, this was refuted, and then the refutation itself turned out to, of course, be bullshit. So, okay, here's how I look at it. Now I'm free. I'm free to point out the obvious and the manner and the fashion in which I shall be judged at my funeral. Not what I did in my 20s, but what I've done most recently, and perhaps properly so, because I freely admit I am absolutely no one's patsy, and through life I have myself been rather harsh and judgmental, just as life has been, oddly enough, harsh and judgmental with me. So translated is like, okay, what have you done for me lately? Recently, John McCain has basically shat the GOP bedsheets for about the past two decades, okay? And he made it not about anybody else but him. And just as his military history was the truth, here comes some more unfortunate truths about John McCain. McCain's funeral was punctilious. It was detailed and purposeful. Now, this is from MSNBC.
They look at him as if John came from another age, that he lived by a different code, an ancient, antiquated code where honor, courage, character, integrity, duty, where it mattered, because that was obvious how John lived his life.
Parenthesis, if he liked you.
But the truth is, John's code was ageless, is ageless.
Welcome back to Hardball. That, of course, former Vice President Joe Biden. He was speaking this morning about the life, legacy, and character of Senator John McCain during a memorial service in McCain's home state of Arizona. McCain was said to be heavily involved in the preparations for his own memorial plans, including the people who will take part in the services, from former Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush to an NFL wide receiver, even a Russian dissident. According to the New York Times, McCain had carefully stage-managed a 4-day celebration of his life, but what was also an unmistakable rebuke to President Trump and his agenda. Let's bring in tonight's roundtable. Tara Dowdell is a...
And so that's mature, isn't it? To make your funeral, your very own funeral, an anti-Trump crusade. Let me repeat again for those of you who just tuned in. McCain is one of the most honorable guys imaginable, unless you went against John McCain. Then it became personal. Again, what these people are not saying, in many occasions, some did, they had the guts to say so, is President Trump was specifically not invited, purposely. So when you heard from the fake news sources that President Trump failed to attend, that was a result of McCain's wishes, not Trump's. So Trump went golfing, just like Obama went golfing during Scalia's funeral. Antonin Scotus's jurist, Antonin Scalia, he had his funeral. Obama was invited to the funeral, and Obama decided that it was best to go golfing. This is from BusinessInsiderNews.com. John McCain wanted Obama and Bush to speak at his funeral, but Trump was not invited. Americans from Arizona to Washington, D.C. will have the chance to pay their respects to Senator John McCain at multiple memorials. It's like the funeral, the never-ending funeral. It's like we're sending off a president of the United States. John McCain was a 6-term senator, war hero, who died from brain cancer on Saturday at the age of 81. President Trump will most likely not be among the attendees. He was not invited. The New York Times reported in May that Trump would not be invited to McCain's funeral. 2 White House officials confirmed to the Associated Press that the president was asked not to attend. So that was purposeful. That was planned. It didn't stop at Trump. Sarah Palin, by the way, and some of McCain's campaign advisors were also asked affirmatively not to attend. This is from my good friend Susan Katz-Keating's article at People magazine. You heard Susan Katz on my show about 3 weeks ago. Great person, great journalist. She had an article in People magazine. It read this way: John McCain's 2008 running mate Sarah Palin is not invited to his funeral. It's sad. President Donald Trump and former John McCain presidential running mate Sarah Palin are not invited to memorial services for the iconic Arizona senator, multiple sources tell People. Two names you won't see on the guest list, Trump and Palin, says a Capitol Hill source with knowledge of funeral plans from McCain, who died of brain cancer. Invitations were not extended to the two political figures, confirms Carla Udy, a fundraiser who has worked with and been friends with the McCain family for decades. A source with the knowledge of the funeral arrangements adds that several longtime McCain staffers were also removed from the invite list in recent days by Udy. That's inclusive, don't you think? Because McCain was the great uniter. He broached the aisles. Well, he was the great uniter when he was in lockstep with the Democrats, not so much when he wasn't. This is also some more disinvites. This is from Politico.com. Campaign manager Steve Schmidt, senior advisor Nicole Wallace, and longtime strategist John Weaver were snubbed, as was former running mate Sarah McCain. Okay, well, let's go back a little bit, all right? Because John McCain is clearly inviolate. Just ask the American media maggots. This is from TruePundit.com. We're going to go back in John's history just a bit. John McCain's first wife speaks out. McCain dumped her after a crippling car wreck, angering Ronald and Nancy Reagan because that John McCain is so incredibly honorable. Let's harken back to 2008 to cover some important background intelligence about Senator John McCain, who's been lashing out at President Trump and others from his apparent deathbed. McCain likes to illustrate his moral fiber by referring to his 5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and to demonstrate his commitment to family values. The 71-year-old or the 81-year-old former Navy pilot pays warm tribute to his beautiful wife, Cindy, with whom he has 4 children. But there's another Mrs. McCain who casts a ghostly shadow over the senator's presidential campaign. She's seldom seen and rarely written about, despite being mother to McCain's 3 eldest children, and yet had events turned out differently, it would be she rather than Cindy who would be vying to be First Lady. She's McCain's first wife, Carol, who was a famous beauty and a successful swimwear model when they first married in 1965. She was the woman McCain dreamed of during his long incarceration and torture in Vietnam's infamous Hanoi Hilton prison, and the woman who faithfully stayed at home, looking after the children and waiting anxiously for years. But when McCain returned to America in 1973, to a fanfare of publicity and a handshake from Richard Nixon, he discovered his wife had been disfigured in a terrible car crash 3 years earlier. Her car had skidded on icy roads into a telegraph pole on Christmas Eve 1969. Her pelvis and one arm were shattered by the impact, and she suffered massive internal injuries. When Carol was discharged from the hospital after 6 months of life-saving surgery, her prognosis was bleak. In order to save her legs, surgeons had been forced to cut away huge sections of shattered bone, taking with it her tall, willowy figure. She was confined to a wheelchair and was forced to use a catheter. Through sheer hard work, Carol learned to walk again, but when John McCain came home from Vietnam, she had gained a lot of weight and bore little resemblance to her old self. What happened? She was kicked to the curb. Carol married one of McCain's midshipman classmates in 1958 and then divorced as a single mother and married John McCain in 1965. But when McCain returned from Vietnam, Carol was either in a wheelchair or in crutches due to her accident. McCain's marriage, however, began to falter due to his partying away from home and extramarital affairs. He was young and fine. She was not so much. So in 1979, McCain met Cindy Lou Hensley. He filed for divorce from Carol in 1980. The uncontested divorce became official in April of 1980. Carol never remarried. But wait, there's more. Everything wasn't butter and honey during McCain's POW era. There were some issues, it was brought up, about McCain's POW MIA stance.
Later learned in open session at the conference that Jane Duke Gaylor and her niece had gone to the Senate police to file a complaint against Senator McCain. The police refused to help them. Mrs. Gaylor and her niece were told to leave the Senate building or they would be arrested for disturbing the peace. Senator John McCain was personally and single-handedly responsible for gutting the Missing Service Personnel Act of 1996.
Hold that thought. Remember that act of 1996.
Why? Why does McCain treat the POW MIA families in this manner? Why? I have been a POW MIA activist since the day my brother was declared missing in action. I was there in the early days fighting the Washington bureaucrats for my brother's rights, as well as for the rights of prisoner of war John McCain. Why has he turned his back on us?
That's a pretty good question. So what happened is McCain evidently assaulted a member of a POW MIA family. He slapped a woman for asking him to do something to help her family. They went to the Senate police, who refused to take the report and then threatened to arrest those people. I'm just wondering, is that really how you define integrity? And why was McCain being an obstructionist with regard to what everyone would consider to be his issue, the POW MIA issue? What was that about? Why did that occur?
No apologies, though, for a musical parody that many around the world took as a true sign of his thinking.
Bomberan, you know, bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway, when veterans are together, veterans joke. And I was with veterans and we were joking. And if somebody can't understand that, my answer is please get a life.
I'll tell you, what's not said on the television and will not be said on the television is how much Vietnam veterans and POWs hate John McCain.
The Senate felt compelled to set up the Select Committee, and that it took them 9 months to set up the committee, mainly because of the opposition of Senator McCain, who was bitterly opposed to any attempt to find the POWs.
Did you hear that? John McCain himself was opposed to trying to find POWs.
Remarkable, seeing that he was a POW himself.
No instance would he ever give in and say there were POWs left behind. And my first question is, how would he know or not know? So just that which is reasonable he never exhibited, and I don't know why. Maybe it's a guilt complex. Maybe he promised the Vietnamese something. Okay, and I don't know what it is. And maybe he actually believes that. That would be the saddest of all.
He probably did more harm to the idea of trying to get the truth out than any other single person through the efforts he did to block the release of classified intelligence dealing with the POW-MIA problem.
McCain stepped in and, in effect, made it harder to get documentation. That certainly hurt us because we had hoped for a massive release of documentation.
Why would that be? The only thing that logical thinking people can say is they conclude that he must be hiding something. What and why?
Many, many documents were held back for no reason, and our goal on the committee was to just dump this stuff, to declassify it, literally, to the public. But, of course, they withheld information from the committee. The U.S. government held all kinds of information from the committee.
We're going to come right back. After this break, we're going to continue, and I'm going to tell you more specifically why it is that John McCain was not my best friend, and I'm not going to even remotely attempt to pretend that he was.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday, live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is The Right Guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The Right Guy on SHR Media.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Hey, who's going to take Sean's chair?
I'll run the buttons if you want.
The what?
The slider
the
thingies. Those
what?
Things.
We have those?
Yeah, right over there.
Where?
It's on the board. That damn technology.
Fucking technology.
I know. What are we going to call it?
Call what?
The show.
What?
The show.
What show?
The new show, Wednesdays. Every Wednesday on SHRmedia.com. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Sackheads.
Against tyranny.
There you go.
Against tyranny.
I like that. Let's do it.
You guys are porked.
Hello. I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires, due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network, to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back. It's the final 25 minutes. The final 25 of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct, right here from the SHR Media Network. This is our first night with the new monster computer, our first night with the two monster Scepter monitors, our first night with some different graphics and some different configurations. And I was talking about John McCain and why John McCain wasn't necessarily one of my best friends of all. And we were asking, why was it that John McCain seemed to be the strangest obstructionist when people were asking him to release records and create an act so that they could access information about POWs and MIA, when in fact John McCain himself was a prisoner of war in the Hanoi Hilton? What sense does that make? Not much.
I know that for a fact.
He didn't want nobody to check his background, because a lot of POWs that were with him in the camp said he was a collaborator of the enemy. And he didn't want nobody looking into his background in the camp, what went on in that camp. That stuff is still classified, so nobody can see it. And he just had it classified forever, so nobody will ever look at it.
Even POWs we knew who wanted to see their own debriefings were not permitted because of the McCain regulation.
But where did McCain get compliments for doing this? The bureaucrats at the Pentagon, because it put a workload on them. It put a workload on them for missing in action people. And did we need that bill to handle a Scott Spiker case? Oh, you bet we did.
And also what it did, and this is what he really opposed, and if you remember the contentiousness we got into him in his office, was that it would hold the bureaucrats accountable by penalty of law.
That's
if
right.
they lied or if they withheld information.
That's right.
And he fought tooth and nail to protect those bureaucrats.
Yes.
Because they were protecting him.
I could never understand that. Why would we, if someone was guilty of withholding information that would help us to solve the mystery of what happened to an MIA and did it deliberately, why would we not want to prosecute that person? So I could never understand it. I thought the language was written, I know Bob Dornan had a hand in it. I thought the language was written very well. I supported it, fought for it hard in the U.S. Senate and mostly on the Armed Services Committee where we debated it, but it was watered down to basically where it was almost worthless.
Now, one of the things that happened with that bill is that we were submarined. The House side, we passed it with no, I don't believe anybody opposed it. It was a pretty much unanimous vote.
401-0 on the House, with every single Republican who is serving sponsoring it, and about a third of the Democrats.
But on the Senate side, we had one person standing in the way of getting in positions that would have been very tough on government bureaucrats who didn't tell the truth. And that one person was Senator John McCain.
John McCain and John Kerry both were not pursuing this with the same approach that I was.
He insisted that no committee be set up unless he was chairman. Obviously, his intent was to kill everything.
Okay, I appreciate you inviting me here, but what I don't understand is this: you're supposed to have a committee of 12.
All my congressmen from Connecticut walked out. All the senators were on that panel. They all walked away. McCain took off. Kerry took off. All that evidence was coming out in Korea because they knew that if they came and listened to the truth, they'd have to keep the hearings open.
They didn't want any information. So they weren't interested in doing anything with the information other than trying to discredit it.
You need to hear this because John McCain has been quantified darn near as God, little g, for the past week or month or so. And he was far from it. Now, you can remember John McCain in any fashion you wish, but you need to also be armed with the truth.
North Korea did not return a large number of American servicemen at the end of the war, and that some of the men left behind were sent to communist China and to the Soviet Union. Internal documents and statements made at the time also show that our government believed that men were still alive in captivity, and until only a few months ago has kept that reality from the American people. It has covered up what it knew through a pattern of denial, misleading statements, in some cases lies, and by doing so with regard to the Korean conflict, it broke its commitment with the people who put on the uniform to fight for the freedoms and protection that we and our allies enjoy today.
What I found interesting was that, coincidental to Kerry running the committee, Vietnam gave to Kerry's family sole rights for the negotiation of all real estate issues within Vietnam.
So was it a case of burying the evidence? And was it a case when courage went MIA?
I'm an old Vietnam veteran, never got in country over there, but I was back in the jungles using a top-secret clearance for different things during my years as a Vietnam veteran. And I know of a lot of Vietnam veterans, brother, and a few POWs. And all the POWs that I've talked to over the years say that John McCain is a lying skunk. You know, that he never was tortured. They were there in the camp with him, and when he came in with his 2 broken arms because he failed to pull his arms in when he bailed out of his plane and had a leg injury, he immediately started spilling his guts about everything because he didn't want to get tortured. And he made 32 different videos for the communists speaking out against America and how evil they were for what they were doing in Vietnam.
In which circumstances have you been shut down? I was on a flight over the city of Hanoi, and I was bombing and was hit by either missile or anti-aircraft fire. I'm not sure which. And the plane continued straight down. And I ejected and broke my leg and both arms.
Now, there's a reason I'm playing this for you, and I'll tell you about it in just a moment, but you need to continue to hear this. By the way, that was John McCain being interviewed by his captors.
And went into a lake, parachuted into a lake.
Information shows that he made over 32 tapes of propaganda for the Vietnamese government.
We do know that when he was there, that he cooperated with communist news services in giving interviews that were not flattering to the United States.
He made those transcriptions, and in the transcriptions, I heard a POW who heard them coming into his cell and said, "Oh my God, is that Admiral McCain's son?"
Let me point this out. Jen McKillop in the YouTube chat makes a very interesting point. She says, I don't think the funeral would have drawn much attention if the Democrats had won. That's rather damn insightful.
Is that the Admiral's son? Is that Johnny telling us that our principal targets are schools, orphanages, hospitals, temples, churches? That was Jane Fonda's line.
Certainly you do what you need to do to stay alive. Nobody would fault anybody for that.
Exactly. Thank you.
But there comes a point in time where enough is enough.
He admits that he gave them all of the codes, all of the data, everything, and I'm not even so much blaming him for that, because under torture people do that, but it turns out he wasn't tortured, and then he started singing like a canary in seconds.
Yeah, they call him, the Vietnamese communists call him the Songbird. Matter of fact, that's his code name up there is Songbird McCain, because he just came into the camp singing and telling them everything they wanted to know.
And it sounds so good at first. McCain was offered the chance to come home. They called him the Prince. And he could have. But nobody ever takes that one step beyond that. If Admiral John McCain II, Jr., if his son, a lieutenant senior grade, had accepted this princely status and come home in 1967, while the others would sit there for 5 years, what would the Navy have done with the son of an admiral who opted to get special treatment and come home? No Navy career, no House seat, no Senate seat. Would have been the end of his career. So what I'm saying is, yes, he chose to stay, but did he have an alternative if he ever wanted to have a life? And what would it have done to his father?
The reason you need to hear that is because there are alternative voices in terms of what really occurred with McCain. Now, am I saying that this is etched in stone, that this is specifically the fact pattern of what happened? And the answer is no. But don't go there, John McCain, and play as if you're this wonderful person when the possibility exists that you just may not be, and that instead of being a demigod, as everyone seemed to play him up at the funeral, and once Barack Obama, McCain himself, Meghan McCain, and George Bush opened that door and got into the mud, I have no problem with speaking my mind tonight. So how do I remember? How do I choose to remember John McCain? I remember him primarily in two ways, and this was first from my blog of, in June of this year. Who was it that urged the IRS under Lois Lerner to pummel the crap out of conservative groups. That's right, John McCain's office. I knew that John McCain, when opposed, was pretty much an unmitigated asshole who customarily made any issue about him and he should have been honest and clear and just changed his R to a D and been done with it. I said that for a long time. It's no secret that McCain threatened to step across the aisle to the Democrat side. Hell, John McCain has essentially functioned as a Democrat frequently for many years. So this should not come truly as much of a surprise. This is from the WashingtonTimes.com. McCain's office urged the IRS to use audits as weapons to destroy political advocacy groups. There's a reason for this. Let's go through it. A new report from Judicial Watch, they do great work themselves, by the way, Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch, reveals a concerted effort from Senator John McCain's office to urge the IRS under Lois Lerner to strike out against political advocacy groups, including Tea Party organizations. That was the result of an extensive FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, request that was delayed for many years. So Judicial Watch has obtained several key emails from 2013 that chronicled McCain's and Democrat Senator Carl Levin's efforts to rein in the advocacy groups that sprouted immediately after the Citizens United decision from the Supreme Court. Remember that, wondrous, okay? John McCain keeping his end of the bargain to ensure that his application to the Democrat Party wasn't round-filed, okay? The documents uncovered by Judicial Watch include notes from a high-level meeting on April 30th of 2013 between powerful members of McCain's and Levin's staffs and Lois Lerner. She was then director of tax-exempt organizations of the IRS under Barack Obama. The notes reveal the suggestions from McCain's former staff director and chief counsel on the Senate Homeland Security Permanent Subcommittee, Henry Kerner, who urged Lerner to use IRS audits on the advocacy groups to financially ruin them. That was the point. Continuing from Judicial Watch. Lerner and other IRS officials met with select top staffers from the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee in a marathon meeting to discuss concerns raised by both Carl Levin and John McCain that the IRS was not reining in political advocacy groups in response to the Supreme Court Citizens United decision. This is the crux of the biscuit. This ties it all together for you. Senator McCain had been the chief sponsor of the McCain-Feingold Act and called the Citizens United decision, which overturned portions of the act, one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. Except, well, it was the law. So in the full notes of an April 30th meeting, McCain's high-ranking staffer Kerner recommends harassing nonprofit groups until they are literally unable to continue operating. Kerner tells Lerner, Steve Miller, then chief of staff to the IRS commissioner, Nicole Flax, and other IRS officials, maybe the solution is to audit so many that it is financially ruinous. In response, Lerner said that, well, it's her job to oversee it all. And Judicial Watch then also continued. The Obama IRS scandal is bipartisan. McCain and Democrats who wanted to regulate political speech lost at the Supreme Court, so they sought to use the IRS to harass innocent Americans, said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. The Obama IRS scandal isn't over, as Judicial Watch continues to uncover smoking gun documents that raise questions about how the Obama administration weaponized the IRS, weaponized the FEC, the FBI, and the DOJ to target the First Amendment rights of Americans. What's the truth? The truth is McCain was every bit the political backstabber and underminer, and more so than Trump will ever be, because McCain had so much more training, education, and experience in that good field. By the way, you remember, this is also very important. You remember that in July of 2017, in direct contravention of his campaign, John McCain voted no on the Obamacare repeal. And here you can hear him.
Senate Republicans trying to repeal and replace Obamacare, and that vote coming up short when the maverick made his mark. Senator John McCain, just days removed from his cancer diagnosis, stunning the chamber turning the thumbs down on the repeal bill. It happened just feet away from Republican leader Mitch McConnell, prompting an audible gasp in the chamber.
Listen. So basically what happened is that bill failed. Obamacare repeal failed 51-49 because of John McCain. Okay, we conveniently forget that, folks. We somehow conveniently forget this. And this is from TruePundit.com. McCain illegally fed classified FBI intelligence to Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele to set up the Trump Tower meeting. FBI brass helped plot the scheme. Senator John McCain brokered a clandestine and illegal deal feeding classified FBI intelligence to Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele to discredit Donald Trump prior to the 2016 election, according to federal law enforcement insiders. McCain, who was a sitting GOP senator, was provided names of, quote, problematic Russians the FBI had recently investigated or were in the process of investigating. Top FBI executives worked with McCain to provide the names of the Russians, FBI insiders confirmed. Then McCain handed the list off to Fusion GPS, who was working with Christopher Steele. One of the names on the list was embattled Russian lawyer Natalia Veretskaya, who was considered an international security risk and prior to the June 2016 sit-down at Trump Tower was not even allowed entry into the United States or the UK, federal sources said. Well, this is the Obama administration under that period of time, right? How did the Obama administration manage to let her in? That wasn't Trump's doing. That was the Obama administration's. She also set up the infamous meeting at the Trump Tower weeks after her name was handed off to McCain. The same meeting was used as an excuse to wiretap Trump associates, a new and quite disturbing wrinkle in the FBI Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS and John McCain saga. So FBI insiders said the new McCain and Fusion GPS revelations clearly detail a conspiracy within the FBI to railroad Donald Trump's presidential aspirations, and all of it was quite illegal. Some FBI agents are calling for Congress to investigate McCain's involvement with the FBI. This is obviously prior to his death. Prior to the 2016 election, specifically FBI insiders point to meetings McCain attended in March and April of 2016 when it's believed the FBI supplied names of Russians to McCain when he handed the classified intel off to Fusion GPS. And then this story from BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed's Ben Smith. I'm proud we published the Trump-Russia dossier. Exactly 1 year ago, BuzzFeed published what is now simply known as the dossier, a set of reports put together by a former British intelligence officer named Christopher Steele during the 2016 presidential campaign. The 55-page dossier suggested that the Russian government had both compromised and colluded with President-elect Donald Trump. Our choice to publish the dossier was greeted by outrage from two sources. Journalistic traditionalists did not like the idea of sharing an unfiltered, unverified document with the public, whatever those caveats and content may be. Chuck Todd told me on the air, "You just published fake news." Isn't that odd? Chuck Todd on NBC said at the time, "You just published fake news." Isn't that bizarre?
And last night, Trump's personal lawyer said they're going to file a lawsuit against BuzzFeed, Ben Smith, for publishing the dossier. And you have a piece in the New York Times that is entitled, "I'm proud we published the Trump-Russia dossier." And in one sentence, you say, "I haven't had a single person approach me to say, I wish I hadn't read the dossier and I wish I had less insight into the forces at play in America."
This is from Breitbart.com. Fusion GPS admits they used John McCain to pass anti-Trump dossier to Obama-era intel agencies. This is from Israel. The founders of the controversial opposition research firm Fusion GPS admitted that they helped the researcher hired to compile the infamous, largely discredited 35-page dossier on President Donald Trump to share the document with Senator John McCain. The goal of providing the dossier to McCain, the Fusion GPS founders explained, was to pass the information contained in the questionable document to the U.S. intelligence community under the Obama administration. McCain's office did not reply to Breitbart News' request for comment on the matter. So what's happening now? This is from another story. It says, former Clinton Foundation donors flocking to the McCain Institute. In years past, the Clinton Foundation enjoyed significant donations from individuals and countries that sought to purchase influence in Washington. But now the McCain Institute is their new darling, having received large sums from the likes of George Soros and Saudi Arabia. How weird or odd is that? How does that happen? And, of course, you really haven't heard anything from the LDAM, the leftists, the Democrats, the American media maggots. How odd is that? So, John, all I wanted you to do was to be two things, honest and clear. You know, at least we straightened out the Bush legacy. They, too, kind of like McCain, they should have been honest and clear, and the Bushes probably should have placed a D after their name instead of an R. Every Bush is dead to me. Hell, I live in California, where every bush literally is dead to me due to drought and forest mismanagement. So, you know, okay, they wanted to talk about civility, bipartisanship, and compromise, and that's what we got out of the McCain funeral, wasn't it? Oh, no, sorry, no, we didn't. We got precisely the opposite, rather. The D.C. elites and the leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots, they all drooled over the McCain funeral because McCain pissed all over the conservative cake many times. McCain was no conservative. McCain was all about McCain. McCain was no saint. He was no god. He was just another armored D.C. politician who ultimately voted his own benefit. No more, no less than so many others. That he got cancer was due to his lifespan. I've had cancer 3 times. I'm still here. Does that make me a saint? When I cack, will I be knighted and revered? Hell no. And remember, they said it was less a eulogy than it was a call to arms. When John McCain was proffered the opportunity to take the proverbial high road, like everybody complains about Trump, McCain took the opposite path, as did many of the people in attendance who spoke at the McCain funeral. So John McCain, in his final influential hours, had a chance to make it all not about division, but he failed. And he divided. And he was no saint. He was no paragon of virtue. He was just a flawed little man who happened to step into D.C. politics, enjoyed it, enjoyed the power, drew lines, set boundaries, and made it all about him. Just like every other D.C. politician. And again, let me be honest and clear. The LDAM embraced John McCain, quite frankly, because he was a useful tool at various moments. McCain embraced them on many occasions, and he opposed Trump. If there were such a thing as a classic, ingrained like a tick Republican in D.C., it was John McCain. Trump stepped in to blow up that paradigm, and hence the McCain-Trump controversies. McCain was all deep state. Trump was an advocate for the disassemblage of all of it. So those who were proscribed from the event had no opportunity, even those who were predominantly inoffensive. And truly, okay, let's bottom line this. Truly, isn't that McCain's real legacy? Isn't it this? One bitter dude who did not sit in the White House.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And, of course, tiaras by My Little Pony. Further consideration is also by the Pratt & Whitney Engine Company. Thrust, you can trust. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle 1 refueling team with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour, and thank you for getting through all the radio mess-ups. Thank you for continuing to listen, for listening live. Thanks for being in chat. both in YouTube and in the SHR Media side. I appreciate each and every one of you for sticking with us and taking this time out of your busy day, and also for listening in podcast, and for the American truckers who listen to me too. God bless you. You keep America moving. Folks, tomorrow night, Sackheads Against Tyranny. Sackheads Clint and myself. God bless. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night, Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.